朋友。
Friends of the media, good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference of the Joint Prevention Control Mechanism of the State Council. President Xi stressed that we must prevent and control the epidemic in accordance with law. Premier Li Keqiang put forward clear requirements. We should enhance the prevention and control of imported and exported cases. Today, we'll focus on prevention control in accordance with law and the prevention of imported and exported cases. We have DG Wang Jun from the General Administration of Customs, DDG Yang Xinzhai from the Maritime Safety Administration of the Ministry of Transportation, Director General Liu Haitao from the National Immigration Administration, and Director General Zhu Tao from the Civil Aviation Administration, CAAC, to take questions on cruise ship epidemic prevention, border frontier prevention control, and dedicated zones for the flight stalking. Some updates on the epidemic in the 24 hours on March the 15th in provinces, cities, and Xinjiang Production and Construction Corp. New confirmed cases 16. New deaths 14, all from Hubei. New suspected cases 41. On the day, newly cured and discharged from hospitals 838. Of medical observation 1,316. Severe cases were reduced by 194. As of 24 o'clock of March the 15th, according to reports from from the provinces, cities, and the Xinjiang Production Construction Corp, remaining confirmed cases 9,898, including 3,032 severe cases. Cumulatively cured and discharged from hospitals 67,749. Cumulative deaths 3,213. Cumulatively reported confirmed cases 80,860. Remaining suspected cases 134. Cumulatively traced close contacts 680,462. Those who are still under medical observation 9,582. In Hubei province, new confirmed cases 4, all were Wuhan cases. Newly cured and discharged from hospitals 816, including 752 from Wuhan. New deaths 14, including 13 from Wuhan. Remaining confirmed cases 9,605, including 9,150 from Wuhan, among which severe cases were 2,975, including 2,878 in Wuhan. Cumulatively cured and discharged from hospitals 55,094, including 38,384 in Wuhan. Cumulative deaths 3,099, including 2,469 in Wuhan. Cumulatively confirmed cases in Hubei province 67,798, including 50,003 in Wuhan. New suspected cases 2, or both were Wuhan cases. Remaining suspected cases 18, including 15 in Wuhan. In the 24 hours of March the 15th, newly reported imported confirmed cases 12, including 4 in Beijing, 4 in Guangdong province, 2 in Shanghai, 1 in Yunnan, and 1 in Gansu. As of 24 o'clock March the 15th, cumulatively reported imported confirmed cases 123. From Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, cumulatively reported confirmed cases 217, including 148 in Hong Kong SAR, 10 in Macau SAR, and 59 in the Taiwan region. Apart from Hubei province, in other provinces, new confirmed cases 12. All were imported cases. New suspected cases 39. There were no deaths severe cases were reduced by 6. Locally, new confirmed cases were 6, all Wuhan cases. Confirmed cases across the country have been reduced to below 10,000. Severe cases have been on continuous decline. Greater efficacy and effectiveness have been presented, and the localities are gradually recovering normal medical procedures. Now we'd like to take questions on today's topic. Please identify yourself before you address your question. Journalist from the first row on the right side, please. With CNS, to prevent imported cases, China has established a joint prevention control mechanism for port case prevention. What were the measures adopted by the National Immigration Administration? I'd like to ask DG Liu Haitao from the administration to take the question. Thank you for your question. To effectively prevent the risks of imported cases, National Immigration Administration has leveraged the Joint Prevention Control Mechanism. The information of the personnel that were learned by us were timely shared with the General Administration of Customs and the local governments. We have 3 earlies, 3 sharings to coordinate with other departments to enhance the screening and ensure precise management. 3 earlies. We know in advance the boarding information, the flight information, and the landing information. To be more specific, before when the overseas personnel were checking online, after the flight took off, before the flight landed in China, at these 3 timing points, we knew in advance the passenger information carried by international airlines. After the flights have landed in China prior to their going through immigrations, the screened information by us were timely reported to the quarantine departments at customs. So as to ensure comprehensive screening, pay special attention to the risky groups and provide them with enough information for some dedicated and targeted efforts. The personnel coming from hard-hit regions, countries, with the knowledge shared by us, relevant departments can be prepared to ensure screening. 3 sharings. National Immigration Administration on a timely basis provide our information acquired through our screening with 3 other ministries and departments. First, the personnel information was reported to the departments under the Joint Prevention Control Mechanism. With the GACC and the health administrations, we've shared 1.1 million pieces of information. This information helped local government to dynamically understand people coming from other countries, so as to carry out targeted prevention and control. The second sharing is that border control authorities across the country had comprehensive screening and inspection on everyone coming into China by looking at their passport information. The personnel coming from hard-hit regions and countries, altogether 62,000 such personnel have been identified. We timely notified local customs to ensure targeted inspection. Third sharing is that NIA
uses the information provided by the Joint Control and Prevention Mechanism, which is about the inbound travelers, especially the suspicious ones, and conduct a screening further. With the screening, the close contacts traced will be notified to the Joint Control and Prevention Mechanisms throughout the country. We've already distributed such information for more than 210,000 pieces, and this is considered as an effective control on the inbound travelers. Furthermore, we follow strictly the rules and regulations and ensure the information security and the privacy of the owners. Thank you. Let's continue. On the left, on the first row, the First Lady reporter, please. Thank you. With China transportation news, previously there are infection cases reported on the Princess cruise lines. U.S. failed to respond effectively to such cases. Then what about China's response? We will have Mr. Yang to answer the question. Thank you for your question. Indeed, during the Spring Festival, we also found 2 public health emergencies on 2 cruise lines. One is on January the 24th, the Costa Selina in Tianjin port. There were 4,806 passengers on this cruise line, and the other one was in January. It was on January the 26th. It was the cruise line Venice, and there are also more than 2,000 passengers on this cruise line. Both of the cruise lines reported fever patients. As you know, the cruise lines are quite enclosed spaces with independent air circulation, and once a public health emergency happens on the board, and if the cruise lines fail to be dotted appropriately, then this will cause severe consequences. It is fair to say that with the joint efforts of the stakeholders, the 2 cruise line emergencies were appropriately handled. For the Ministry of Transportation, in the light of the actual conditions, there have been effective measures conducted. On the one hand, immediately after the public health emergencies, we suspended the international cruises which departed from the Chinese ports. So this has involved 10 cruise lines, which belong to 7 international owners. And also for the passenger services, they have been suspended. Secondly, the ministry has worked out a policy circular providing specific guidance for the operation of the cruises and the passenger boats, and we followed the protocol and keep record of the travelers' information or passenger information. Furthermore, thirdly, for cruise lines such as the ones we have mentioned, we have worked out specific emergency response plans. Let's continue. On the right, on the second row, the third lady reporter, please. Thank you. With Hong Kong Economic Herald, I noticed that today several government agencies jointly issued a policy guidance concerning the falsifying declaration of health for the inbound travelers. So could you please elaborate on that? Thank you for your question. We will have Mr. Wang to answer the question. Thank you. Just as the moderator has mentioned, now domestically, we are trending towards a positive momentum. However, the prevention of external import or the imported cases has become the focus. Just as President Xi Jinping has pointed out, now at this critical stage against the epidemic, we need to keep alert against the potential importation of the cases. So following the State Council's overall arrangement and providing targeted measures, including the epidemiological surveys and the border control and border quarantine, we've conducted specific measures. On the other hand, for such law-based monitoring and control measures, we should make use of the administrative and law enforcement tools to defend the authority of law enforcement and ensure that there's no case imported. So for the GAC, together with other government agencies like the Ministry of Justice, have worked out specific measures. The policy circular that you have mentioned is one of such measures. I think it is conducted at the right time. The first is people's health and safety are always the top priority. Epidemic prevention and control is the top priority at the moment, and any illegal behaviors or malpractices should be fought against. And second, there should be very strict law enforcement. The local authorities are requested to strictly observe the laws and the regulations. In the policy circular, 6 kinds of behaviors are described as illegal behaviors, and such illegal behaviors will be charged as criminal offenses. Thirdly, we are improving the working mechanism. The policy circular has instructed the accelerated law enforcement and also other related aspects. We will try to ensure the integrity or the consistency between the law enforcement and the actual practices. The policy circular has already been released to the public. I'll just stop here. Thank you. Just now, Mr. Wang Jun pointed out that to prevent imported cases has become the top priority. According to WHO information, by 17 o'clock, March the 15th, there have already been cases identified and spreaded in 134 countries in the world. So it is not suggested to travel outbound. Now we will have the Q&A continued on the left with CNNet. The risks have been classified as high, medium, and low. What are the criteria for such classification?
Thank you for your question. CAAC has issued the third version of prevention control guidelines at airports and on air vehicles. Previously, disinfection, sterilization, disposal of garbage have received such guidelines. We've also looked at the passenger seating information and gave a comprehensive rating so as to classify the risks into high, moderate, and low risks of international flights, so as to adopt precise countermeasures. For the low-risk flights, we focus on the insurance of people movement. Temperature monitoring is conducted, and the crew wear ordinary masks. For the moderate risk flights, apart from the above-mentioned measures, we also have a proper seating arrangement, restriction to certain people movement during the flight ride. We also enhance temperature monitoring, and the crew members wear surgical masks. For high-risk flights, we minimize the services provided on the flight, and we had a zoning arrangements for the passengers. The passengers were distributed, and there is a reserved quarantine zone set up for emergency response. According to capital prevention and control requirements starting from the 10th of March, in Capital Airport, a certain zone was set up for the collective reception of passengers from the high-risk regions. And we've also set up other service subzones within this special quarantine zone, buffer zone. At Capital International Airport, the international flights come to these dedicated and earmarked zones, and we have a transfer agreement for taking away the passengers who show symptoms of fever. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the third row.
Thank you. I'm China Arab TV journalist. In the airports and centralized isolation places, for those who came back to China from overseas, if symptoms of infection are found, should they be treated locally or sent back to their own country's origin? Thank you.
好，请翻译一下问题。
来自中央卫视的记者，我想问一下，在机场以及在集中隔离点，如果发现有入境旅客出现了感染症状，是就地治疗呢，还是会遣送回来源的国家？在机场所发现的这些入境旅客和在集中隔离点所发现的有感染症状的旅客，对待是否会有不同？
好，我们先请王军先生来回答这个。
I'd like to ask DG Wang Jun to take the question. Thank you for your question. General Administration of Customs has been following the frontier quarantine law. At the port of entry, people with symptoms will be taken over for the medical screening. After the medical and health quarantine efforts were completed, with proper personal protective equipment and measures, GACC will then have a proper registration of information and then transfer the personnel to designated authority from the local government. I'd like to make some additional remarks. In case of the presentation of symptoms of these inbound passengers, they will be sent to designated hospitals for further screening and treatment if necessary. Next question, please. Journalist from the third row on the right side. China Media Group. I also have a question on the guidance of opinions jointly issued by 5 ministries and departments on the violation of laws for the port of entry practices. Some inbound incoming passengers have already been confirmed, but prior to their boarding, they have hidden their personal information and exposing risk to the passengers on the same flight. So if we can make a sentence or judgment of the case, how serious is such a violation? I'd like to ask DG Wang Jun from the administration of Customs to take the question. Well, you have come to the core of this joint opinion issued by 5 ministries and departments. We have clarified 6 behaviors as violations, including refusal to make a health declaration, refusal to take a temperature monitoring, refusal to take epidemiological survey and health inspection, honest in filing their health information, refusal to take health quarantine measures by customs, and other intentions hiding of their health information. These constitute serious violation, exposing great public health risk to others. The most typical practice might have been the behavior mentioned by you, the refusal to fill in the health declaration card or dishonest in filling the card. After the outbreak of the epidemic, Customs Authority has initiated a health declaration system, which bears great significance for Customs to understand the information and precisely identify the highly risk personnel. However, some incoming passengers have speculated on this health declaration or refused to make a health declaration or lied in health declaration, refused to take temperature. Some inbound passengers, knowingly that they were already affected with high dry coughs, high fevers, or they have been to hard hit regions, but they have concealed their symptoms and travel histories. Some even took pills to reduce temperature temporarily to conceal the fever symptoms so as to go through the quarantine of the customs, and after they come through the port of entry, they were confirmed. And this has caused the infection and quarantine of the co-passengers on the same flight or the same transportation vehicle, causing major public health risks. In accordance with the criminal law and in combination with the just announced opinions following number 332 clause of the criminal law, these people will be held as of criminal law offenses and violations. So I'd like to take today's press conference as a platform and ask all the passengers to truthfully declare your health, cooperate with the customs to be engaged in temperature monitoring, health checks, and epidemiological surveys. This is not only to be responsible for your own health, your family members' health, it is also a legal obligation that is binding. If you speculate, if you extrude from the checks, you may be exposing yourself to the jail risks. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the 4th row on the left side, please. Thank you. South China Morning Post. Most of the newly confirmed imported cases were overseas Chinese. We know many overseas Chinese want to come back to China. At this timing point, will China consider a chartered flight for withdrawing Chinese nationals from abroad? And in this process, how should we prevent the importation of cases? Thank you for your question. Civil aviation is an important channel. We serve prevention, control of the epidemic, and the travel of the passengers. We protect the legitimate rights of passengers to travel. We should also ensure the safety of passengers. Since 4th of March till today, in accordance with the Central Party Committee Working Leadership Group's deployment, on top of the scheduled flights for the areas where there is special needs and capacity well-conditioned cities, we have set up some temporary chartered flights, altogether 13 flights. And these flights went to hard-hit countries. 7 temporary flights have taken back Chinese citizens 1,001.
We've also used the chartered flight to send the dispatched experts and also the medical supplies to help other countries for the next step. Guided by the State Council's joint mechanism, in the light of the request, we will make proper arrangement. Thank you. On the right, on the 4th row, the third gentleman, please. With CGTN, I'd like to know how many Chinese seamen are working on the international ships. How can their health and safety be guaranteed? We will have Mr. Yang to answer the question. Thank you for your question. For the seamen, we call them as people who are safeguarding the blue sea. Indeed, at the moment, among the international ships, there are about 80,000 Chinese seamen. The Ministry of Transportation attaches great importance to their safety and health. We've adopted mainly 3 measures. First, properly address the problem of working overtime among the sailors. At the moment, due to the epidemic, sailors cannot take their scheduled breaks or shifts. So, together with the Ministry of Social Security, we have worked out relevant policy measures to help the Chinese sailors or seamen to get their scheduled breaks, safeguarding their health and safety and also the legitimate rights and interests. Second, we worked out technical guidelines and help the sailors to protect themselves from the epidemic. In terms of the institutional setup and the relevant systems, the PPE supplies, the self-protection measures, the psychological counseling and health support, altogether in 7 aspects, we have worked out the technical guidelines to help the sailors. China is the first country in the world to issue such technical guideline to help protect the health and safety of the sailors. And thirdly, we work out specific measures to help the sailors and facilitate their work. Now we can have the remote processing of the sailors' relevant applications and the procedures. Also, we are collecting information about the sailors inbound and communicate the relevant information with the relevant agencies and authorities. Thank you. On the right, on the 4th row, the first lady reporter close to the aisle, please. With AFP, starting from today, all the inbound travelers will be transferred to the designated quarantine places. May I know if such measures will be expanded to all the international airports in China? Will China adopt travel restrictions? For your question, the Beijing municipal government has adopted measures. The localities throughout the country will take relevant measures based on the laws and the regulations and in the light of their local conditions. Now let's continue. On the left, on the fourth row, with Xinhua News Agency. Now the domestic epidemic control situation is trending towards a sound momentum. However, there is growing concern about the potential import. May I know the number of inbound travelers since March the 15th, when WHO declared this as a pandemic, and how many of them are foreign nationals and Chinese nationals, respectively? Thank you for your question. Since the outbreak of the epidemic, we have attached great importance to the international movement. We've never slackened our efforts in monitoring the inbound and outbound travelers. As you have said, on March the 15th, WHO described the epidemic as a global pandemic. Since then, all the border points, on average, have received 120,000 travelers, down by over 80% compared with the same time last year. Among the travelers, the international inbound travelers on average, the daily number is about 20,000, and the foreign nationals accounted for about 10%. I would also like to take the chance to offer some tips to the Chinese domestic travelers, especially to try to avoid unnecessary travels outbound in order to better protect yourself. Let's continue on the right, on the second row. Thank you, with Phoenix TV. Since the epidemic, there are many trade restrictions on personnel movement by many countries, but the goods movement is not restricted, and the goods movement accounts for 80% of the total movement. So how can such goods movement be guaranteed? Thank you for your question. Mr. Yang, to answer your question. Thank you. According to available data, every day we receive about 500 carriers or ships, and for passenger inbound, the average daily number is about 7,000. The importation risk in the movement of goods is mainly related with the personnel engaged in the international shipping. So for this, we have adopted various means like the automatic identification or screening system. Enforcement of the regulations. We've also notified the coming all the arriving ships and conveyances the relevant Chinese requirements and check if they are qualified to enter into the Chinese border.
I also urge the ships to ensure the duty scheduling and the sanitation measures. Third, we've enhanced the emergency response systems and were engaged in joint prevention control measures. For some key cruise ships, we have proper docking arrangements, enhanced water zone management, so as to facilitate convenience to customs staff for their onboard quarantine. We've also collaborated with the International Maritime Organization and ILO to extend the certificate renewal of some Chinese crew members to avoid unnecessary person-to-person contacts or face-to-face certificate renewal. And for the next steps, we will continue to follow the joint prevention and control mechanism, leverage the local governments to ensure proper full procedure management. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the first row on the left side, please. With the Hong Kong China Review, Capital International Airport has set up a dedicated zone to receive passengers from hard-hit countries. We'd like to learn more information about that. I'd like to ask Director General Zhu Tao from CAAC to take the question. I've already mentioned some information previously. Starting from the 10th of March, the third terminal was used as the earmarked zone to take passengers from hard-hit regions. Starting from the March the 5th, international flights were all parking in Terminal 3. International passengers were quarantined and screened by the Customs Administration, Immigration Administration, and the Civil Aviation Administration, all three authorities. Capital Airport has set up a dedicated zone, and I'd like to provide you with more detailed information after the press conference. Journalist from the third row on the right side. Thank you. With CNR, many overseas Chinese nationals would prefer to come back to China. So what were the services provided to them after landing till they reach their doors? I'd like to ask DDG Yang Xinzhai to take the question. So it's a question related to the transportation of the passengers after the port of entry. It is fair to say that the epidemic has been blowing in the world. Imported cases have exposed a defining challenge for us. It is important for us to step up prevention of the imported cases. Ministry of Transportation pays great attention to the risk in accordance with the joint prevention and control mechanism. We've been collaborating with other ministries and departments to ensure transportation services to the returnees. And we've been collaborating with other departments to have the screening and to understand the needs. And the Joint Prevention and Control Mechanism's leadership, we've been collaborating with the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Administration Authority, Immigration Authority, and established an information sharing and a coordinated work mechanism to timely understand the identity information, health status, stopovers, and the destinations of these inbound travelers and make transportation arrangements in advance. Second, we've clarified transportation needs. We guided localities to set up emergency transportation fleets, classified the transportation needs of passengers coming from different regions, countries, and transportation sites. Big, moderate, medium, and small trucks were arranged to ensure there is still vacancy in the fleets. So it is always that the fleets and the trucks are waiting for passengers to avoid any crowd of the passengers. We have door-to-door services, one-stop service to take the inbound passengers from port of entry to the destined city to ensure a closed loop, avoid contact with others, to minimize the risk of transmission. Third, we've guided localities to follow the standards adopted by high-risk regions to implement the guidance for prevention along the highways, waterways, disinfection, sanitation, ventilation, seating arrangements, and personnel protection were measures adopted. Zhejiang Province had a very good practice that can be referred to by other localities. Zhejiang Provincial Transportation has equipped the trucks with a quarantine zone for the drivers. And they've also urged the passengers to wear masks throughout the ride, turn off the air conditioner of the vehicles, open the windows for natural ventilation to minimize the risk of driver infection. Fourth, we emphasized on the transportation safety. The transportation companies were urged to ensure the safety in the vehicles, so that the vehicles will not have indoor virus, avoid stopovers. We've also leveraged the information technology to enhance the dynamic monitoring tracing of the drivers to avoid overspeeding and minimize the hidden risks. Thank you. Last two questions. Journalist from the fifth row on the right side, please. Thank you. From China Aviation newspaper, I'd like to ask the safeguarding measures adopted by Chinese aviation. Are these measures known by domestic and international flights? What will be the future steps taken? Thank you. I'd like to ask DG Zhu Tao to take the question. Thank you for your question. In our previous efforts, civil aviation has accumulated valuable experiences. We have been collaborating with relevant ministries and departments to share our effective safeguards across the world. Experiences are in three aspects. First, we have shared the third version of transportation companies, airport and airline prevention and control experiences. Second, we have been organizing some video conferencing to convene overseas airliners to let them know our experiences, and all these experiences have been uploaded on our website. Third, we've submitted working documents to International Aviation Organization to share our experiences on the platform of International Civil Aviation Platform. Our experiences can be passed on to other countries. We have won high acclaim from International Civil Aviation Organization. South China Morning Post asked a question on the specific measures adopted by chartered flights. Actually, in the third edition of our prevention and control guideline for civil aviation industry, there are specific chapters on chartered flights arrangements. We also hope friends of the media can help us to pass on our experiences and share our documents so more airliners, more passengers can benefit from these experiences and information. Thank you. Last question. Any questions? journalist from the 5th row on the left side, please. Thank you. China port of entry news. We've noticed that in overseas countries, the epidemic has ballooned into a pandemic. There is an ever-increasing risk of imported cases. What were the measures adopted by the General Administration of the Customs? What are the significant role played by these opinions?
Mr. Wang Jun, please. Thank you for your interest and concern over the work of GAC. Since the outbreak, we've adopted stringent measures both domestically and internationally. Now, the fast spread of the epidemic and the potential importation of the epidemic to China have aroused concern from GAC, and we've adopted various measures against such potential spread. Namely, first, we have strengthened the assessment and closely follow the developments in the hard-hit countries and regions, and we have adopted targeted measures. And second, we are strictly implementing the health declaration practices for people with pneumonia or various symptoms of the COVID-19. We develop specifically the online passenger health declaration APPs. The passengers can use their mobile phones and use the APP to make health declaration in advance. And thirdly, we have adopted specific quarantine measures, the 3 specific inspections, and including the health inspection and also health screening. Also, for people who are close contacts or who traveled from the hard-hit regions and who have developed the symptoms, they will be closely monitored. And for the transit, this refers to people who have developed the symptoms or who are contacts of the suspected cases. Following the joint control mechanism, they will be transferred to the designated hospitals for early treatment. Fourthly, we have strengthened the health quarantine concerning the vehicles and conveyances traveling from the hard-hit countries and regions. We will have the onboard inspection. Also, together with the relevant government agencies, we have developed and used the information sharing and joint control measures. Today, the policy circular jointly released by the 5 ministries and agencies will work in synergy with previous and existing regulations. And for some malpractices, they have already been identified by today's policy circular as a potential criminal offense, and we will enforce the laws and regulations to ensure the health and safety of people. Furthermore, for malpractices or illegal behaviors, the government agencies will work in a coordinated way to crack down the illegal practices. Thank you. Thank you very much to our speakers. And the topic for today's press conference is following rules and regulations to guard against the importation of the epidemic. For tomorrow's press conference, we will focus on the joint efforts to develop medicines and vaccines against the COVID-19. We welcome your questions, and that's all for today. Thank you.